Hello and welcome to my podcast on radical self-love, an Ayurvedic perspective on healing body and mind. My name is Sandra Hayes and I'm a Vedic practitioner, meaning I utilize Ayurveda, yoga and Vedic astrology as well as transformational creativity to help you become a conscious creator of your own life, health and well-being. For more information and for access to my online learning platform, The Little School of Happiness, please go to www.sandrahayes.eu. Life is constant change and constant fluctuation. We all know that. But this change happens in cycles. It is like everything is made up of cycles of time. We're going through the seasons, through the months, through the days, the years. We're going through cycles of the sun and cycles of the moon. And connected to that are the cycles of our own cellular metabolism, the cycles of our life, of our growth and development, childhood and old age and all of that. Our body goes through cycles, our psyche goes through cycles. And they have a certain quality. It's not just a quantity of time, but it is a quality of time. And there are always many such cycles within cycles, like fractals. Life really is made up of all sorts of fractals. When you zoom in, there's a microcosm emerging in the macrocosm. And Ayurveda really acknowledges these cycles and deals with the different specific quality of time, because each cycle is colored with a different type of energy, a different quality of time. During each of these cycles, the elements increase or decrease, and so the doshas increase and decrease all the time too. Even if you're born with a certain genetic trait, a certain prakriti that is fixed and won't really change much over our lifetime, it is never completely fixed because, for example, during the first 6 months of our life, our body contains a lot of water. It contains about 75% water, and it remains high throughout our childhood. And what does that mean? That means Kapha is higher than the rest of our lives. Kapha is naturally higher in children. I'd like to talk today a little bit about that first phase in childhood, that Kapha phase of our childhood, because it is a really important time. And even, for us as parents, it's really important to be aware of certain developments, certain things that happen during this time. All of us during this time are higher in Kapha. That means also psychologically, we are more attached, we're more needy, we're more loving, we're physically, we're growing, we're increasing our mass, our earth and water element is increasing. And our skin usually is still really smooth, our hair and eyes are shiny, we're showing all the traits of Kapha. Even if we are natural Vata or Pitta personalities, Kapha will always be relatively high in childhood. And also in motherhood, mothers also have more Kapha than any other time. Kapha increases. Now already when we are pregnant, we are increasing in mass. We're putting on weight, where our water content increases again, our hormone levels change. And also we become more attached and develop more Kapha traits that we need as a mother to be nourishing people to our children. Of course, that doesn't mean that we're all of a sudden purely Kapha personalities or that all children are Kapha personalities. They are still, our children in particular, they are an expression of the genetic pool of a whole extended family. And they are as individual as anyone. A Pitta father and a Kapha mother can very well have a Vata dominant child. And that will mark their personality and their need. And so it makes a lot of sense to look at our children through the eyes of Ayurveda. It really helps us to understand them better. For example, a Vata child will naturally have a need to move. They just don't like to sit still for any extended amount of time. They cannot concentrate on one thing for as long as a Kapha or a Pitta child might be able to. So it makes no sense to compare children one against the other. It doesn't make sense because each of them has a very unique personality and have very unique strengths and weaknesses. And as a society, we do have a tendency to point out the weaknesses and compare to somebody else that is better. But, in Ayurveda, it really is helpful to look at the strengths. And in a Vata child, for example, they really long for freedom. It's simply a longing for freedom that is in them. It's the elements air and space that are dominant in them. They are like little birds, they need to fly. They're flighty. They don't sit very long in one place. And also, they're creative. They have a really wonderful imagination. All of those traits are really, really wonderful. But if this child is in an environment that doesn't recognize these wonderful qualities and is trying to mold them into other qualities, make them more Pitta or Kapha, because maybe sometimes that happens when the parents are Pitta or Kapha, and naturally a parent wishes the child to be just like them, or school setting, our school system, unfortunately, is not set up to respect the Vata child at all. And if the Vata child isn't growing up with the feeling of being respected and recognized in its own natural personality as it authentically is, then it is like sowing the seeds for problems later. A child who is not seen as who they truly are will develop all sorts of mechanisms just in order to be accepted and loved by their caregivers. And, those mechanisms aren't always healthy. They're healthy in the moment because it helps them survive, but they will become unconscious conditionings that they very likely will struggle with later. And if there's a lot of these conditionings building up, a lot of mechanisms, survival mechanisms, then they are much more likely later on in life to be unhappy or to develop mental health issues or, other types of issues. So we can really do a lot as parents to sow the right kind of seeds to make them feel that, yes, they are accepted and respected as who they are. It doesn't, of course, mean that they have to, we have to let them get away with everything. We are, as parents, there to balance their dosha, but we have to also first accept. And it's helpful to understand then the difference between prakriti and vikriti. What is their nature? And that has to be respected and accepted. And then where do they start developing a little bit of an imbalance? And then we have to be the ones who pull them back and prevent that imbalance to happen. And like I said, the school system is not really set up usually to respect, especially the Vata child. I've heard of a school system somewhere, I can't remember where it was, could have been Germany, who offers a short PE lesson or some form of physical movement in between each lesson, like a sports-centered school. And if that school if I imagine that school also would offer a lot of creative choices, then that would be an ideal school for a Vata child. Vata children, with their air and space, they are very sensitive, particularly sensitive to sound and touch. Often they don't really like tight or rough clothes or tight hugs, or they're picky eaters as well, or they respond sensitive to loud or harsh sounds. And autistic children, for example, that is a Vata issue, mostly a Vata issue. this, highly sensitive reaction to the outside world. And but a Vata child is always going to be different to a Kapha or a Pitta child. If a parent, for example, would say something, a crude joke or something derogatory to the child that, they just mean as a joke, it could wash over a Kapha child completely without any effect. A Pitta child might, be assertive and say something back, but a Vata child might be hurt inside and maybe even carry a lifelong hurt inside of them. They really are like little birds. They need a lot of freedom, but they also need a lot of protection at the same time. And as parents, of course, that's not always easy because, for example, if you are a Kapha mother, you might want to coddle the child and keep it warm and safe in your arms all of the time and feed it all of your good food all of the time. And you might even feel hurt when the Vata child yet again isn't hungry or it wriggles out of your hug. And if you're a Pitta mother or father, then you might have a lot of expectation of the child to do well academically or, to do all sorts of courses and, achievements, because you might be concerned about its success in society and its status in society, its knowledge and its intelligence. And even if you're a Vata parent yourself, then that could just be too much Vata altogether and offer too little security, So you see, it really is a game. It's a dance, a constant attempt to find balance, to find the middle way. So we can accept the child as it is and respect its natural traits, but also offer just enough of its opposite to keep it balanced without trying to change it. The trick is, as always, to be compassionate and aware. Again, I'm referring back to the Yoga Sutras, one of the most efficient and to-the-point sutra of all of them, I think, that, if you're a yoga teacher, you will know it quite well. Abhyasa vairagya abhyam tanirodha. Practice, abhyasa, and vairagya, detachment. And this sutra is like a guide for life to me, because it doesn't just refer, of course, to the yoga practice on your mat or to your meditation practice, but to all of life. Every moment can be a practice of awareness. And that means being completely aware of whatever the situation is. Also, your child being completely aware and accepting the situation or the child as it is, without judgment, without expectations. It just is complete and utter acceptance. Even if it is, something that needs to be changed, even if there is a difficult behavior or a sickness or something, disease or something that is not ideal, it needs, first of all, to be completely accepted as a given. This is the situation, this is the child at the moment. And from that place of complete acceptance, without any judgment or expectation for your child to be different, from that place, we can make the right decision then that is actually made out of compassion and awareness. So that the child feels seen. It's like a child that has a tantrum, we all know about that, needs to feel seen before it can actually calm down again. It doesn't have to get what it wants. If a child has a tantrum because of it wants ice cream, it doesn't have to get the ice cream, but it needs to feel seen in its hurt. And that's a guide for life, really. But let's talk about the Pitta child for a little bit too. Somehow a Pitta child might have it a little bit easier in this world of competition, because it actually is naturally competitive. Now, this is a child who can and who has to concentrate on something. Pitta is mostly fire. And that fire needs to consume something. It actually really needs fuel. And those are the children who like to consume things, who they like to read, to observe, to learn. They're really bright and intelligent, and sometimes they can really thrive in a school setting. Sometimes, not always, because they are so hungry for knowledge and for success as well that they sometimes feel frustrated. For example, they can get bored in school if the subject is too easy or not interesting enough. And that happens a lot too, because obviously a classroom full of 30 children, it can't please every single child. And the Pitta child would be among those probably who need more than the average. And because of that, they feel like they're not getting the attention that they need, and they do need a lot of attention. They are like a bright flame, like a light that shines, and light needs to be seen or it doesn't exist. It needs to be recognized. They want to be recognized. They thrive on recognition, on achievements, and they need challenges. They also need a lot of organization, and they can organize themselves pretty well too. They actually are great at organizing others too, which makes them natural leaders. So they do need opportunities for that, to prove themselves as a leader, or at least to organize something for themselves on their own, to have this kind of challenge. Especially older children, when they go through adolescence or starting their adolescence, they are really full of Pitta, because that is the time of change, from the Kapha phase of childhood to the Pitta phase of adulthood. And Pitta is rising high always when we're going through some kind of transformation. It is the fire of transformation. Fire transforms, it consumes something and changes its structure, it turns it into something else. And it is the fire of transformation that is rising high in them at that point. Every child goes through this, no matter if they're a natural Pitta or Vata or Kapha child, but during adolescence, they're all high in Pitta. And this Pitta fire is burning inside of them. And depending on the kind of fuel it gets, and, that fuel is usually inside of them in their unconscious minds, or depending on the past they had and the past experiences they had, this fire can be really destructive. A fire is always destructive. That's its nature. It burns everything to ashes. And in this case, it is important because it burns all the things that are not needed to go further forward into the next phase, pure, without any baggage. And, just like I said before, how important it is for the child from early on to be seen as who it is. Because if it isn't, then it will create these mechanisms to try and please the surrounding adults, because it depends on them. And the more mechanisms it creates, the more unfinished business there is in its unconscious mind. And that will come up during adolescence. So most of the time, the more these children had to adapt to their environment and maybe not really being able to be who they really are in their natural environment, the more difficult will their adolescence be, because they have a lot of unfinished emotions hidden inside that need to be burnt away. And then when they did burn away those unfinished feelings, which is important, an important phase, is a very hard phase, a very difficult phase for both the child and the adult, but very important too, because only when all those unfinished, unconscious conditionings, as much as possible, now we will never completely be able to burn all of them away, but as much as possible, because then only can we, the children, rise up like a phoenix from the ashes. And what is burnt is really all of the toxins, because it becomes toxic. All the hidden anger maybe and anxiety that had been building up during their childhood, all of the times when the child wasn't able to be itself or express its anger as well. It happens often, when the child goes through something, maybe the parents divorce, for example, the child just, it depends on both parents, and it has to swallow down its own feelings and anger and, just be often complacent and go along. But inside there will be hurt and grief and sadness and anger. And depending on how well the child at the time was able to process these emotions or not, whatever hasn't been processed will come up during adolescence. As women, we actually know this Pitta rise very well, at least if you're older women, or actually in any age, because every month when we get our period, when we're menstruating, we are going through that same process. During menstruation, and as well in a big way during menopause. These are all times of transformation and of cleansing out. It's the time where the inner fire burns everything away that isn't meant to be there. It might come across to others as irrational, but it isn't. In fact, it makes complete sense. Because remember, when you had your PMS, for example, and you started crying or shouting or whatever because your husband had put the coffee in the wrong place or something stupid like that. It may seem stupid to an outsider, annoying maybe, but inside it is actually just a rising of something unfinished, an unprocessed emotion that our unconscious mind presents ourselves with now, so that we have the opportunity to finish processing. And it could be triggered by a simple, innocently muttered sentence or a gesture, a forgotten tea bag in the sink or the coffee in the wrong place, or whatever it is that triggers it and brings up whatever was unfinished. And our teenagers are going through that same process. Whatever unconscious emotions remain unprocessed, they will be rising to the surface, not as rational thoughts, of course, but as seemingly irrational emotions. And for them, it's even harder than for us because they're young and they're not, mature yet to really be able to deal with these emotions sometimes. So they do need our help. And a Pitta child, even before adolescence, if it's a Pitta child that feels that something goes against its own beliefs or truths, when it feels someone was treating them unfairly, then they can get quite angry because Pitta fire burns often as anger. And sometimes they can even get aggressive at times. But understanding that really makes it a bit easier to soothe a Pitta child. For example, knowing that Pitta children respond to light. They are often sensitive to light or to the sun, but they also like seeing something interesting. They like seeing the beauty in the world. And a Pitta child can be cooled down by the sight of something interesting or beautiful. And they respond also to being seen, to being recognized as who they are. They really, really respond quickly to that. And they respond to logical understanding. They have a great understanding of things. But the only problem sometimes is that they might find it hard to accept that other people might see things differently. Natural Pitta children, they need a certain amount of challenge all the time, focus and regularity, and then they can thrive and shine with all of their talent that they have. As a parent, we really need to be careful to find that, the right amount of that. If a parent is very stressed out, has high Vata, it is like literally like air blowing onto a fire. The Pitta child can get aggravated by that. But if it's the right amount, simply, right amount of air blowing onto the fire, then it simply keeps it going. It keeps it inspired. It keeps the fire going. And if you're a Kapha parent can soothe and cool the Pitta child very well because Kapha is cooling and soothing. However, if we're doing too much of that, then it suppresses the fire. This is also what happens in the body when we develop allergies or autoimmune diseases, when the Pitta tries to rise up as inflammation, but constantly gets suppressed down by the cooling Kapha mucus building up, until the inflammation finally turns against itself. And it's the same thing as, with parenting. If we keep pushing everything down, soothing too much, keeping the child from expressing, then that might be just too much suppression. And also as a Pitta parent, we have to also be careful to not be too righteous and too organized for the Pitta child, and allowing the child to be also to determine for itself which way it wants to go, allowing the child to organize itself, unless the parent is very balanced. So, like with everything, it's like in the airplane, when we are told put your own mask on first. I think that's a really good advice also for every single moment in parenting, because we have to balance ourselves out. Only a balanced parent can parent the children so that they become balanced. And that's why it is so important to start with ourselves as parents. So I think the best advice, even if you happen to be in a situation with your child, with a child that is particularly difficult at the moment, my best advice is first look after yourself. Try to balance out yourself. And more often than not, the child will automatically balance itself out just by you being balanced. And even if that's not the case, then you're in a much better position to help the child step by step. But also let's talk a little bit about the Kapha child. Kapha children, on the other hand, unlike the other two, they are, or seemingly are, quite easy in terms of parenting, at least on the surface, because they are the most loving and kind and quiet children of all of them. They are the children who love to snuggle up all the time and, lie on the couch with a book or maybe their iPad or watch movies. And they also love to eat, so they are not particularly picky eaters. They just eat what you're giving them, and they enjoy food, and they're not really troublemakers at all. They just like to please people. They like to please the adults around them. They're the children that play, with dolls and love animals, and their caring side comes out, quite early on. They need a lot of security and a lot of love. But they are really quite sturdy as well. They don't usually get sick a lot, unless maybe there's also a lot of Pitta there too. And, that, like I explained before, that gets suppressed by all the Kapha. And then they might develop allergies or mucus problems. But generally, if they're healthy and balanced, then they really have a strong constitution. And they can take a lot of stress as well. They are the ones that come out least traumatized, probably from their childhood trauma, unlike the Vata child that is influenced by a lot of things we might say without thinking. But the Kapha child, it's a very sturdy nature. But they do have a tendency to put on weight, for example, to get lazy, to not move enough. There's a lot of overweight children these days, more and more. So we do have to be mindful of that too. And in school, sometimes they can also have a little bit of problems, although they don't generally have, problems as in they're not troublemakers. They can sit still and, for a long time. But they are slow learners. They're relatively slow learners. They can have learning problems as well, but not because, like the Vata child, they can't sit still and not concentrate, but because they just simply process things slower than others. Physically, also, they have a slower metabolism, and also in their mind, they process things slower. They just simply take more time. However, what they've learned, they retain. They can, remember things for a long time, where, some people, they can learn something and do really good exams, but then ask them 2 weeks later and they've forgotten everything. Where the Kapha child has it more difficult to learn in the first place, but they won't forget as easily. But they're water. Their element is water mostly. And that is emotional. They are emotional beings. So also that shows in their learning abilities. They are sensual learners. They need to feel. They need to associate feelings and emotions to something to really learn it. And that means that they learn really well through experience or through stories, but not necessarily through dry academic methods. And again, this is what often is used in school. It's not, if we had a way of learning more through actual life experience or through, creativity and stories, then the Kapha child would do really, really well. Their metabolism is slower, their processing ability is slower, but they don't forget as easily. They are also the ones who are really sticking to things. They don't give up easily. And also, they are very, very kind. They like to help others. They like to please others, which, sometimes can mean that they're a little bit, being pushed over as well. So, as parents, our challenge is then to, on one side, give them all of the love and security they need. And let's remember that all children are high in Kapha naturally during this phase of life. And on the other side, to gently motivate them to move more, to exercise more, to be more assertive. I actually remember my Kapha Vata daughter used to take so long for her homework, hours and hours. And also I remember one day she came home from school with her lovely long hair cut into a ragged fringe. I can't remember how old she was, 6 maybe or something like that. And she cut her own hair, and she said that her friend had liked her hair clips. And so she just wanted to give them to her, but then her hair was in her face, and so she just cut it off. So that's Kapha, trying to please others no matter what. Kapha children are also great, actually, at getting what they want. They can be quite manipulative at times, so they're not, they do have their difficult sides to them as well sometimes. Although as children, they're quite innocent in that. My Kapha Pitta son is another example of that, because he was really good at that. He would know exactly when to snuggle up to me and telling me that I'm the best mom in the world. And, whenever he did something wrong, he'd just, hug me and be really, really charming, and everything would be forgotten. And I also remember he even had figured out at a very young age when I was menstruating, without even knowing what that was. But he knew that there was a certain time of the month where I got very generous when I went shopping, where I bought things that I don't usually buy. I would, once a month, I would buy for me and my husband a bottle of red wine. That was my thing when I was coming up to my menstruation, and some chocolate. And it's things that he noticed. And so always when he noticed it was coming up to that time, he asked to go shopping with me, because he knew that then he would be able to ask for whatever sweets or chocolate, and I wouldn't be able to say no to him, and I'd just buy things that I wouldn't usually buy. So the bottom line is that, parenting, like everything in life, it really is a balancing act, and our children are a balancing act, and they have a certain personality that needs to be respected. And we as parents have to recognize that, and we have to respect them just as they are. And then from a place of love and respect, we need to try and be their remedy, be their Ayurvedic remedy to balance out their dosha, not with force, not from a place of ego, because I want you to be different now, but from a place of love and compassion. And that can only come when we are, when our own dosha is in balance. So this is the biggest thing that you can do, like I already said. Make sure your own dosha is balanced, and then you can look after them. And one thing, of course, is nutrition, good nutrition. And also that is a balancing act in itself. In Ayurveda, there's a concept called pranana. That means satisfaction. That means when we eat food, it has to give us a feeling of satisfaction, both during the meal and also after. We have to like the food that we eat. So here goes the idea of, forcing our children to gulp down kale smoothies or finish what is on their plate, which, I've been through and I've also done to my poor children at times. And if I had my time all over again, this is one thing I would be probably a lot more relaxed about, and making sure that they enjoy the food that they eat. That doesn't mean that we have to give them cake and ice cream all the time, because that also is a matter of habit, that we just create habits, and those habits, they come again from ourselves. So if a child eats with us the food that we as parents eat, and it becomes it is a part of the family, it's treated as part of the family, then it will sort itself out probably. So I find this very, very important, to cultivate a feeling of connection and community in the family. A child who grows up eating meals with the family together will never develop as many problematic traits around food as a child who, eats alone, who gets, a sandwich handed or chicken nuggets handed when they're hungry. Or even, who gets different types of food all the time. So just integrating the child, I think, is really important. There is, of course, so much more to say about nutrition, about Ayurvedic nutrition, and, how to use it for your children. And yes, if you need more help with that, please feel free to contact me, book a consultation with me. You will get, as always, a discount using the code podcast. So just, contact me. The contact details are in the description of the podcast. I hope it was at least a little bit inspiring to you to look at your children in a different way from the Ayurvedic perspective. I hope it will help you. Thanks for listening, and bye for now. You were listening to a podcast on radical self-love, an Ayurvedic perspective of body and mind, by Sandra Hayes and the Little School of Happiness. For more information and offers, go to www.sandrahayes.eu.